On today's episode of the Blue White Illustrated Recruiting Podcast, Sean Fitz and myself go back through everything that fans need to know surrounding Whiteout weekend, which recruits made it, which recruits didn't make it. We'll also go over a little bit on how this weekend stacks up to some previous years, just looking at the numbers. So let's get it started. All right, Fitz, Whiteout weekend has come and gone, and you're going to have to carry me through this one because I feel like I was in the stands. I have a limited voice and I'm sick, but yeah, you'll have to carry me through this one. But
you sound like you were on the field, man. Like that's you actually sound better than you did 2 minutes ago when you were prepping for this. So impressive stage voice there. You also sound like you may have been yelling at the Phillies once or twice this weekend. I'm sure that had something to do with it as well.
I tried yelling at the Phillies, and I honestly just kind of had to lay down at the end of the game. But we did get up for that Bryce Harper home run. Awesome job there, Bryce. I'm so happy right now. But all right, let's talk about Whiteout because some fans care about the Phillies, but most of them probably don't. All right, I'm going to start with looking at the numbers because I think some fans, I always have questions about how this one stacked up compared to previous years. And long story short, this was the deepest list that we've seen as far as uncommitted scholarship guys. But it wasn't as deep as we thought it was going to be. There were a handful of guys who didn't make it. We'll talk about that here later in the podcast. But going through the numbers, it was a little over 130 players total. And we calculated, or we tracked 52 uncommitted scholarship prospects total. If we go over the years, that's a little bit higher than last year. Last year was 49 uncommitted scholarship players. 2019 was 44 uncommitted scholarship players. And 2018 was 42 uncommitted scholarship players. The biggest list we've ever seen was that 2019 Michigan game where there was like 160 plus. And I think Penn State learned from that experience that there is too many at some point. And that's why we've seen about 130 the past 2 years.
Yeah, James Franklin made a plea, I think, last Wednesday night. He's like, this is not the game to bring your friends along to. This is going to be packed. And you look down there on the sidelines before the game, and it was just a sea of people just everywhere. That's tough for the recruiting staff, for the on-field staff, because these guys are coming, and sometimes you just don't know what to expect from a game. I mean, you come to a MAC game or something like that, and you get some attention from the staff. This weekend, not so much, because it's such an important game on the field. And then you couple it with tripling or maybe even more the typical turnout for a recruiting weekend. So you're not going to get that kind of one-to-one attention. But the guys that we've talked to, did get a chance to catch up with many members of the Penn State staff. They've expanded that staff, the recruiting staff, and that's been a good thing for weekends like this. I said it on the podcast, our live show last night with Nate, that official visits this weekend are not a good idea. You just can't get what you want to get accomplished with an official visitor. It'd be nice, talking to some people, it'd be nice to add like a one-day official visit to the NCAA rules. But I think that is just kind of talk right now, where you could bring guys in, especially at Penn State. I mean, this is a horrible place to travel and stay, just in terms of looking at other places in the Big Ten where you can, fly in, you can get a hotel. It's just not happening. And when the game is at 7 o'clock or 7:30 at night, these guys would like to go back to a hotel. It's just not possible because all the hotels booked with fans. And that's the double-edged sword that you get with big weekends in Happy Valley. So I think that's probably a reason we saw some of those no-shows that you had talked about. But going back to your original point with the math of this, highly concentrated on scholarship players. Now, Penn State does offer more scholarships now than it did in the last couple of years, and that's by design. But it's really a really good group, probably just short of being an elite group with some of those no-shows, but another great weekend for Penn State. The positive vibes coming out were great. They put on a show. You can say it probably didn't have the same energy as an Ohio State Whiteout or a Michigan Whiteout or even Auburn last year. But they really did put on a great show. And at the end, when you win 45-17 in what you've propped up to be a big game, and what this, was a big game for the team as well, but what you've propped up to be a big game, that's going to sit with people for a long, long time. And as I've said countless times, this is going to be something that benefits them in the future. The immediate results aren't there yet, but we'll see what comes about of it in the coming days, months, and weeks.
Yeah, this game is all about parlaying this experience into junior days down the road, and spring practice visits and things like that. I think we get a lot of fans who, you know, what were the talks they had with the coaches and all that, and really you're not hearing much of that. I mean, pretty much everybody I've talked to just said they came to the game. Maybe they had a brief little talk with someone in the recruiting lounge, and it goes right out.
Can I butt in here, Ryan? Because there's a question on our board that just went up before we started recording on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It was asking you about the handshake in midfield. So how does Penn State do that? Well, what they do, they've got a list of guys that are priority guys, and I feel bad saying that for the guys that don't get brought up, but there's every game there's guys that are higher up in the list, and guys with offers or guys with connections to great programs, things like great high school programs and things like that, and they all get shuttled into the Penn State sideline, and they come out. They get matched up with interns and with volunteer coaches and things like that. And then they get brought out to James Franklin. And how that goes is it's a queue. You stand there in line, you wait for your go ahead. Whoever brings you out takes you to the coach. They basically probably have to tell. I mean, there's so many people out there. You have to remind Franklin or whomever they're meeting with that this is the guy that they're meeting with. They shake their hand, they get the picture, they give the bro hug, they do all that kind of things, and then they shuttle the next guy in and just cast the other guy out to the side. That's about the extent of the face time a lot of these guys get with James Franklin. And it's, hey, great to see you. Great to see you again most of the time, because a lot of these guys have been on campus before. Like I said, you get that bro hug, you get the little quick selfie or whatever you get. They've started taking pictures with an official photographer. That's something that's been new in the last couple of years, and you can do that legally now. Couldn't do that before. So it's kind of a fun thing to watch. And you'll notice when we put up our pictures on BWI about the recruiting weekend, it's going to be them at midfield. And I think that's the lasting impression, because being out there in the middle of everything. I mean, I know when we stand on the sideline at the end of the game and just kind of look around and take everything in, it's a special kind of feeling. It's a special kind of vibe. Being out there in the middle of everything, the student section going, all that kind of stuff is really a special moment. And that's the moment that sticks in these guys' minds when you ask them about Penn State. When you look around that stadium, see all white, you see Franklin there being your best friend for 10 seconds or whatever it is, and then moving on. That's the thing that sticks in your mind.
Yeah, one thing from this past weekend too that really grabbed my attention was PJ Fleck was trying to, go shake hands with James before the game, and he probably stood there for 2, 3, 4 minutes while James was doing all the recruits, and then finally at the end, when James is done, PJ comes over, and obviously I couldn't hear the conversation, but it was clearly because PJ's pointing over all the recruits, like clearly like look at what you have here, as far as the attention and the amount of players that they got on campus. So I certainly saw Fleck admiring or respecting all those handshakes that Franklin does, because I think we were just watching him stand there for a couple of minutes, and you could tell that he wanted to make sure he acknowledged Franklin, but hey, let's get through these recruits so I can get back to my team.
You can tell Fleck wants that. He wants that sort of vibe, and he wants that sideline, of course. And he even mentioned after the game, someone asked him about Penn State. He's like, yeah, I don't have the number one running back. I don't have the number one receiver. And, clearly he pays attention to recruiting rankings and things like that. These coaches do, whether they want to admit it or not. Most don't want to admit that they do, but they pay attention to it. So that is pretty funny. And I think we saw what Kenny Sanders there with James, filing through the names, getting the right guys. I think that was Dan Cabala's job last year. So Kenny, I know he's got a lot going on right now, but Kenny getting thrust into that role, which is good, because, he's a personable guy. He's a guy that a lot of these recruits will have their first contact with Penn State. And, it's nice to put some faces with names and vice versa for the coaching staff, because you get a look at these guys. You see if their size checks out. We talk about this all the time. 6'6" becomes 6'3" more often than not when you visit and get those official measurements in and things like that. But it's just a cool little process and how they make things work. And they've kind of gotten it down to a science. It's never going to go perfectly because you have that many kids on campus, but they've really done a nice job of streamlining that game day atmosphere, because you go from there, then you go down to the tunnel. You get to watch, the team come out. You got your phone up in the air to get that grainy video that's shaking all over the place, and and everybody loves it. So it's a cool experience, but just a little behind the scenes of how they get that done.
We do have a few guys who said, they got to talk to Kenny Sanders in the recruiting lounge and things like that. But as you said, I mean, this isn't, it's really a brief talk with Franklin. Maybe you get a minute or two with your position coach. And aside from that, it's just really all about watching the game and sitting in the traffic when it's all over. But all right, let's get into some of the guys who showed 2023. I mean, there's really three key guys that I think most fans have seen by now. But if you haven't, the three guys to note: Devin Hyatt, a solid wide receiver out of IMG Academy, originally from South Carolina, made the trip. Joseph Mupoyi, I'm not sure if I have it right there, but he was here from St. Thomas More. And then Kaveion Keys, of course, the linebacker committed to North Carolina. Penn State and North Carolina were pretty much neck and neck, leading up to that decision. Then he went and visited North Carolina. I think it was at the end of July, excuse me. And then he made a decision in early August. So, Sean, I don't know if you've gotten much feedback from it too much so far. I've been talking with people from St. Thomas More a little bit about Joseph. I should have some feedback on that here soon. But good visit for Joseph. We've talked about him a good bit here in recent weeks. Penn State still wants to continue monitoring his progress. And I don't know if we're going to get Devin Hyatt. He's really hard to get, but Kaveion Keys is somebody we'll keep chipping away at.
Dude, getting Devin Hyatt nearly impossible. Just in terms of we tried to reach him all week last week, and then finally he tweeted out that he was coming. But that's an interesting one. His brother Jalen is the receiver from Tennessee that caught 5 touchdowns against Alabama. So I don't think that Devin is quite that level of a prospect, but he's down there at IMG, and he's a guy that they've been talking to for a long, long time. I wish I had a beat on his recruitment. I don't think many people do. I think a lot of people expect him to end up at Tennessee, but like I said, I'm not sure that he's the prospect, especially as well as Tennessee is doing recruiting right now. Probably they would have to make an exception to take Jalen Hyatt's brother, but it's certainly a question worth asking with Tennessee. Keys is the guy. I mean, when he committed to North Carolina, we said this one's not gonna be over, and that's something that from following his recruitment. We both felt good about Penn State's chances coming out of their official visit, and then eventually it worked its way back to North Carolina. But he came this weekend on his own dime. I mean, this is an unofficial visit. He already used his official to Penn State, so came on an unofficial visit. Has been talking to them constantly since he committed to North Carolina over the summer. Penn State still wants him. I don't know that linebacker is at the top of the need, but this is a guy that they've wanted for a long, long time, and you could throw him in that +1 category. Again, we came out of his first visit thinking that he was probably going to end up at Penn State because he said a lot of the right things. I think he's saying a lot of the right things right now. It will take more research to figure out where he actually stands in his process, but he's got a lot to think about. And I know that his family is closer to North Carolina. They're fans of North Carolina, but I mean, to come up while you're committed for a game in mid-October with signing day 2 months away certainly shows that there's interest there. So that's something we'll keep a close eye on in the coming months.
Yeah, for sure. All right, 2024 made up the vast majority of this list. I think most fans understand why that is by now. We've talked about that a lot. I think there were, out of the 52 uncommitted guys, I think it was around 40 or so, maybe a little under that, were made up of the 2024 class. There's so many guys we can go through. Luke Kromenhoek stands out to me, the Florida State quarterback commit. We knew he was coming, but obviously he's not going to talk about it. And we got late word Friday that he was definitely going to be there, so we posted that on the board. Obviously, James went down to see him to play earlier this year. All of that grabs our attention. With him committed to Florida State, he's not really opening up too much about it, but 1+1 there, James going down, now him coming here. I think he's somebody we need to probably be talking about a little bit more at the quarterback position. Sean, I'll either throw that to you or anybody else you want to talk about. This list is so deep. I think we could spend 30 minutes on it going through everyone.
Yeah, we could, but with your voice, I don't think that's going to work out. Ellis Robinson, the fourth, a guy that we highlighted last week going into the weekend, number 3 prospect in the country by On3. So I guess he'd be the highest rated guy on hand this weekend. Really good visit. A lot going against Penn State here in the sense that he's down at IMG. He's originally from New Haven, Connecticut, but he's down at IMG for the last 2 years of his schooling. And that's tough it's been tough for Penn State to overcome odds like that, especially when Alabama wants him, Georgia wants him. He's going to go to Georgia in November. I think probably would lean with them over Alabama right now, but I think Penn State still has those schools to catch. But great experience, got a great relationship with the staff. Penn State was his first offer, so that's something that has stuck with him. But that's going to be a tough pull. Ernest Willor, the defensive lineman from IMG Academy, was also up. Told me it was the best atmosphere he's ever seen at any college game. So getting him back on campus, a kid that's originally from Baltimore, visited when he was at St. Paul's School down in Baltimore, to get him back on campus is what you said, setting the table for the off-season visits, whether that's a junior day, whether that's getting ready for a spring or a summer official visit or something like that. I think that's huge. A couple of guys that we have RPM picks in for: Jalen Harvey out of Quince Orchard, Maryland; Kevin Haywood, Archbishop Wood. Still feel pretty good about where Penn State stands with those guys. I'm going to start skipping around this list here because I see T. Frank's pulling pictures as I say their names, and I'm going to try and mess them up. Sam Piloff, the linebacker from Middletown, Wisconsin. That's an interesting one to me because he's been on campus, I think, 3 times now. He came to camp, earned an offer, came back, I believe, for the Lash Bash or later in the summer, and then took in this whiteout game. There's a window there. Wisconsin, obviously, going through a coaching change. I don't know how that's going to turn out, whether they keep Jim Leonard there or not, but still, you've got a window of opportunity to establish yourself and establish the stability that you have and sort of put yourself in a position to take the lead there. So not sure how that one plays out in the long run, but Penn State's really played that one well so far. Anthony Specca, James Franklin was at Central Catholic on Friday. This is one that I think probably Michigan, Penn State. I know you probably would agree with that as well, Ryan. Penn State's just got to keep getting him on campus and keep churning that they want him to stay in state and all those sort of things that they tell in-state prospects. So you could just keep going down the list, but those are some guys that really jump out at me. I will say this one more. DeJuan Williams, the running back from St. Francis. So Imatep, who we thought was coming, did not show. There were guys from St. Francis that we thought were going to show up that did not. But DeJuan Williams, he showed up on his own. I don't think any other St. Francis kids there. So showing up on your own, I think it's his second game this year. Is he at the top of the board for the running backs? It's hard to say. I think he's a really good player. But that'll be that's an interesting one to me, considering how Penn State has not really had much luck there at St. Francis.
I believe DeJuan Williams has been on campus 3 times now, dating back. I think it was it the Lash Bash? I know it was the end of July. I can't remember if it was the Lash Bash or not. I think it was the Lash Bash. Then, of course, he came up for the photo shoot with Tom Lemming. So he went to the Ohio game. And then, of course, this past weekend as well. So, it's not often that you see the St. Francis guys consistently visiting Penn State. And here we have 3 visits in 4 months, something like that. So that certainly stands out to me. And then you mentioned Piloff. I don't know if Piloff's a guy we've talked about enough just because of how deep the linebacker board is, but his camp workout was legitimately one of the best we saw this year. I mean, he would checked in, I think, like just under 6'2", good size. It was a little lighter, I think 6'02", which is actually fine. That's not lighter at all. That's pretty much where the staff wants him. But man, he ran, I think it was like a 4.3-ish shuttle, something like that. I believe it's what it was, like a 4.6-ish 40. I mean, like some really good numbers there, stacked up really well in the different drills. This is a really good athlete that I know Penn State really wants him. And it's probably, when we're talking about Chris Joneses and the Aaron Childs and the Speccas and all those linebackers, Piloff has come out and proved it, and he's higher on that board than I think maybe I've talked about, at least over the last couple of months. But one other guy too I wanted to mention, Sean. Did you mention Chance Robinson from St. Thomas Aquinas?
I did not.
I'm not sure if you did. Just another really good wide receiver prospect. Of course, Penn State has King Mack and Conrad Hussey already committed, who did make it this past weekend. That was an important one as well. Right. We want to make sure we mention that they were here. We're working to get in touch with those guys. But Chance Robinson, their teammate, 2024 wide receiver from St. Thomas Aquinas, as I said, he's ranked number 203, 202, depending on the rankings. Pretty consistent there, 4-star guy. Definitely another player that, just watching him on the sidelines, he was really enjoying his time out there. And from limited talks with some people so far, that he's a guy people are pointing to as someone they think they really kind of got a foot in the door with. Of course, Jordan Lyle, he wasn't able to make it, but he's a really good running back out of Aquinas too. So Penn State just kind of can. Yeah, he's been up, I think, twice. And I mean, as of the end of the summer, he had visited Penn State twice and hadn't visited any other school. Like I confirmed, like, you didn't go to Miami or anything like that I didn't know of. And you said, no, Penn State's the only school I've visited. So just interesting there.
For a Fort Lauderdale kid, you know?
yeah, we see that regularly. So just interesting. Penn State's really trying to build a pipeline with Aquinas, and that kind of has stood out to me a little bit here over the last couple months. Okay, 2025. I mean, this list isn't nearly as deep as, of course, the 2024 list, but there's some real quality prospects there. Anthony Sacco was on campus this past weekend. Brett Clatterball, I believe it is, a linebacker prospect out of Virginia. Deshaun Burnett, another really good linebacker prospect out of Pittsburgh. I can go on and on. Jeff Exner was here. Malik Washington's a quality quarterback, but maybe the best prospect of them all, Latsier Brooks, running back, Millville, New Jersey. Is he? Would you have him as the best prospect of that group?
You know,
I think Latsier Brooks is
like that from the 25 standpoint, but yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for that. I mean, he's electric. Just he could play running back. He could play in the slot. One of the top players in New Jersey in the next cycle. He's very, very good. I didn't really think of the 2025s like that because there's so much evaluation to be done. But I think he's right up there. 5'9", 175, but he's got a lot going for him as a playmaker there in South Jersey. So I agree with that.
Ryan Montgomery, I think, is, when you look at the on-3 ratings, Ryan Montgomery is, I should mention, of course, Montgomery too, 2025 quarterback out of Findlay. I keep coming back with Ryan though, man. His brother's committed to Ohio State. I just don't, I think because of that, from a Penn State fan perspective, fans can just only get so excited at just how many times have we seen a brother play for Ohio State and the younger brother come to Penn State. I don't think that's ever really happened. So something to keep an eye on there. But I mean, I think from a rating perspective, Ryan Montgomery is probably the top guy here this weekend. Anthony Sacco is probably right around there as far as the top rated guys. But again, we're talking 2025. So much has to shake out still here in the months and years ahead.
Yeah. Two guys we didn't mention in 2024, Tyseer Denmark. We kind of skated over that one. You did interview him, and that's a big one. That's like Ohio State, Penn State, and coming down to it, supposed to commit in November. We'll get some more feedback and try and figure out where things are. And the Armstrong brothers, Deontay and Devontae, very interesting prospects to me because of kind of what you said with Luke Montgomery. I don't know that Ohio State has room to take twin offensive linemen. I know they're in state, and I know there's a lot of evaluation to be done by the Buckeyes, but that's an interesting one to me because I think they do want to play together. Penn State wants them. They offered both of them after camp in the summer. Deontay a little bit bigger. I think he's the more highly ranked of the two. Devontae might be an interior guy, but if you can get two really good twins in your class. I mean, I worked with Kalen King and Kobe King, but if you can get really good twins in your class, that goes a long way when you're building, that's 40% of an offensive line class right there. So that's just something to put back. And I wanted to get back to Denmark as well, because that's a guy that I think a lot of people have a lot of interest in. 2015. Goodness. I remember covering that class, and now we're talking 2025, which that's where these grays come in. Cutter Boley, the quarterback from Kentucky, really good quarterback class on hand this time, this weekend in 2025. You mentioned Montgomery, Malik Washington, and then they offered Cutter Boley, who is pretty highly ranked by several services. For him to come up on his own from Lexington, Kentucky, I think it says something about the interest there. So, kind of setting the table and figuring out. I don't think Mike Yersich will fully move on a quarterback until after junior film comes in. He's very meticulous about these things, and I think that's probably how you can see that one shaking out. But a good quarterback group in 2025, really good linebacker group in 2025.
I'm trying to think anybody else I haven't really hit on. With the Armstrong twins, they've been up multiple times now. I kind of feel like Kentucky might be Penn State's top competitor there. Maybe Michigan State. I'm trying to get a better read on them, but they continue to keep visiting. And if I had to absolutely make a pick, I think I would lean towards Penn State with those two right now. But obviously, let's see how some more offers come in. And also Ben Roebuck, their teammate. I mean, we talked about this the other week. Imagine that offensive line: Armstrong twins and Ben Roebuck, all at St. Edward there outside of Cleveland. So he was also on campus. Another 2024 guy to keep an eye on too. I just want to mention Jeff Exner too. related to Kenny, but there's there's like a friendship, family friendship there with Kenny Sanders. I think when I look at McDonough, Exner's still a 2025 guy, but this is the next top 2025 prospect that realistically should end up at Penn State. He's listed as a defensive end right now. Really kind of does a little bit of everything down there at McDonough, but we have him at 6'1", 205. And he's another guy who's consistently been on campus, Maryland, Pitt, Boston College, Vatech are some of his top offers right now. But I think Jeff Exner is going to be, maybe not the next Deni Dennis Sutton, but the next top prospect to come out of McDonough.
Yeah, I think so. He's got to grow a little bit, but if he wants to play on the edge, but good start to his career. I believe Kenny and his uncle are tight or something like that. And also Chris Jones is actually Kenny's cousin. So there's a couple connections there to Kenny Johnson. Sorry.
Kenny Sanders.
Not Kenny. Not Kenny.
I said Auburn last week for Ann Arbor. So we're
getting close to even on that one. But no, just a ton of talent. I mean, we could keep going on names here, but there's a lot to like among those visitors. Check them out on the site. Check, by the way, like our video, Ryan. Another offer in that category today, but like our video
sick.
here.
Give me a love.
But no, it's a great experience. I mean, very rarely do you come across a kid that just will say, no, I didn't get the attention that I wanted or anything like that. So the feedback is going to be positive. That's how it is. But you're setting the table for those junior days, the unofficial visits after, for spring ball and things like that. And then eventually official visits, because these 2024 prospects will be in the current cycle before we know it.
Sean, anything else really? I mean, I'm trying to think of the Ohio State list we have coming up this weekend. We're expecting Quentin Martin to be here. Aside from that, we still kind of have some work to do. Anything kind of notable you want to get in before we end this podcast? I don't know if you have anybody confirmed for this weekend that I don't.
Not a whole lot in terms of that, but Andrew Appleyea came out with more film this week, and anytime I have a chance to talk about that, I will. He looks like a guy that can play as a true freshman. That's a tough position to play as a true freshman, and he's not Pat Freiermuth in the sense that he's going to walk into a room where he might be the most talented as soon as he gets there. But this is a kid that I think can contribute early. I'm a big fan of his game. I know he's playing in Massachusetts, so competition is what it is, but he's doing some great things up there. And for one that they almost let get away to Michigan, I think him coming back into the fold, a huge, huge thing for this Penn State class of 2023.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up my stats from last week that I put together. I know Rappelier, I'm trying to find it here. He's totaled 315 yards. This is before this weekend. 315 yards receiving on just 14 receptions. He also had 120 yards rushing on just 3 carries, 2 of which were for touchdowns. Also 17 tackles and an interception. Of course, that was before this weekend. So some impressive stats there for Andrew. And I also want to mention just Tony Rojas, man. These are before this past weekend's games, but he's up to 947 yards rushing on just 75 carries with 18 touchdowns. He's primarily playing defensive end, so he hasn't racked up a ton of tackles. I have him at 18 tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. And I also want to mention, Fairfax had a massive, massive win over Lake Braddock this past weekend. That was the team that tripped them up last year. If anyone who follows that area, like Fairfax has never been like a dominant team, and these past 2 years they put something together. They got over the Lake Braddock hump that's messed them in years, and right now Tony Rojas has Fairfax headed in a direction that really that program I don't know has ever really been at. So definitely
there, yeah,
right. So Nick Scott, they weren't undefeated under Nick Scott.
They weren't that
right,
and
yes.
So anyway, while we're on the class of 2023, you mentioned Hussey and Mack did make it up. I think that's big. That's one that they're going to continue to have to sell all the way until signing day. We'll see if NIL becomes something with that. I mean, there's a lot at play, but they keep not showing up at other schools, and they showed up at Penn State on their own dime this weekend. So I think that was big. Jameel Lyons continues to get bigger. I mean, he's pushing 6'5" now. He's always looked 40, but he's pushing 6'5" now. He's got that frame to fill out. And if he gets things going and everything's going well in the classroom, he's a guy that you could look at and say, maybe he's one of those 4-game guys next year, or possibly even more. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes. We've seen how these guys that put up these big athletic numbers at camp and at other spots have come in and sort of taken it and run with it. And Penn State showing that they will play true freshmen. So that's an interesting thing there. Carmelo Taylor made it up this weekend, the wide receiver commit that I don't think we've talked about at all in out of Virginia. So that's a big one. I know you had a note about Mega Barnwell on the board. Seems to be trimming down a little bit. That's still an enigma to me in terms of where he ends up. Could be offensive tackle, could be tight end, could be defensive tackle, could be defensive end. That's probably about it. So I kind of oversold that. But it's a very interesting subplot there as he gets here, as he gets into a nutrition program, as he gets into the lifting program. Which direction is his body going to take him? Because this is a guy that's over 6'6" now. He's got those, long arms, and there's a lot to like about his physical frame and his physical capability. And he's still playing tight end as a high school player.
Yeah, Barnwell was up around, I think, in the 260s. I don't know if he got to 270, but I know he's dropped like 20-ish, maybe up to 30 pounds. I don't want to overstep there if I said too much. But my point is he just continues to lose weight. He's up truly over 6'6" now. He's always, height's never been really an issue there, but he is legit 6'6" coming out, at least coming out this weekend from what we were told. So just something to keep an eye on there with his weight and his size and all of that. But Carmelo Taylor coming too. I'm just happy you mentioned that because, of course, when Carmelo committed, we were like, how legit is this? We were hearing mixed things. It was a Virginia Tech. Is it this school? Is it that school? South Carolina was the other one.
When you put the graphic out before you talk to the staff, that causes some problems. Not problems, but that causes some questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody was. I remember I was at the mall. I know. I'm there. I've been at the mall like once since I moved down here. I was at the mall and was totally caught off guard with that one. So, but hey, everything there is lined up so far. He's put up some good stats so far this year. I mean, I think I have him for 440 yards, 31 receptions, 11 touchdowns. So not too bad there. And he has Patrick Henry moving in the right direction as far as a team that can make a run in the playoffs as well. So good to see Carmelo make it up because that was one that I've wondered about for a while now. And him making it up here on his own dime too. That's not an easy trip from Southern Virginia. Certainly grabs my attention. But Sean, I can't talk anymore. You good? I think you got everything you wanted to say. I wish I had a little more to talk about today, but it's just been a rough 48 hours. This is what happens when you send your kids to daycare, folks. So you pay a big bill and they get you sick constantly. So I'm going to wrap it up. T. Frank, I appreciate you producing today. Wish I did more promotions and all that kind of stuff. Please like the video. It's $10 for what, till next football season now, Sean? Is that our no promotion now? So still a pretty good deal. Not quite the $1 deal for a year, but $10 for, I don't know, another 10 months or so. I think that's a pretty good deal as well. But T. Frank, wrap it up, man. I need to go get some, if I'm being honest. Appreciate you guys listening.